Welcome, everybody, to the A Little Less Fear podcast. I'm your producer and host of the show, Dr. Lino Martinez. This is your motivational podcast of people's incredible journeys. Oh, yeah, let's do this. Welcome back, everybody, to the A Little Less Fear podcast. Today, I would love to introduce Kari Hohne. Is a dream analyst and expert on the Eastern and Western archetypes that inspire our dreams and oracles. Through her website, cafeausoul, she bridges the gap between an appreciation for nature and the spiritual journey. Her online I Ching is ranked #1 in internet searches. She is the author of 7 books that include Dreams, Ancient Astrology, Tarot Archetypes, and translations of the Tao Te Ching and I Ching. I love this. I love the alignment, and so awesome to have you here on the Little Less Fear podcast.
It's so nice to meet you, and I appreciate you having me as a guest.
Kari, well, thank you. Kari, this is really incredible. All of your topics that you discuss, I'm just really passionate and intrigued and fascinated with. But what got you intrigued and fascinated and on this journey that you're on right now with all of these incredible topics?
Well, I've kind of always had a propensity to understand dreams. Like I always describe myself as a poet as a child, and dreams kind of speak in a metaphorical language of symbols. They're not literal. They use imagery that kind of conjures up emotion in the same way that poetry does. But it's interesting because before we started recording, you're discussing your life path and the idea that that we suffer or not, or why are we being punished, and those sorts of things. But I've had a lot of really great experiences, but I've also faced a lot of challenges, from childhood and on, even getting married, and some of the things that I faced. And so I think that part of what I do is I walk the walk and talk the talk, or walk the talk, or whatever. Like it's being able to make sense out of crisis, and to keep a sense of faith no matter what's transpiring. I've gotten so good at it because I really work a lot with nature. Nature really is the foundation from all of the things that I do. And I can see how nature does things to like the difficult things are what make us stronger, and evolution is only happens because we meet a challenge, right? We evolve and develop new techniques, and even chaos all around us is what inspires creativity. And when the chaos is so bad that we have to make a change, we get creative a lot more quickly. So I don't really see that there's anything bad happening. And I think that a lot of people, and I work with a lot of healers and a lot of artists, people that have a really strong interdimensional existence, as well as an outer dimensional existence. And it's common, it seems, that they all would have said that their path was very challenging, or that they had to really overcome the dark night of the soul, or whatever you want to call it, in order to find that inner light. And then when the inner light, for me, I write a book, it writes itself, or whatever it is I'm doing. It's like I'm filled with the inspiration, and I follow it through.
I absolutely love this. And so you said 2 things. So before we go, I'm fascinated with the dreams and how it's become easy for you to interpret dreams. Before we go, that I don't want to forget what you said about chaos, that it creates creativity. So,
Right.
so basically, we need chaos in order to create order.
Right. I mean, we're called organisms because we're little
Right.
structures that are trying to organize everything, right?
Right.
And we know that, the universe,
Oh my gosh.
and we know that the universe is, moving towards entropy, or things, like that's what I like about Taoism. Taoism is really like probably the only philosophy. It's not really a religion, but it's kind of a philosophy that's founded on nature. Somebody, they really watch nature to understand the human journey, as opposed to trying to personify nature. But anything that you see in nature nothing comes to an end, and it goes up and down and round. And Taoism is like, and you probably know because you study Buddhism, which they're very similar. Holding to the middle way without extremes. Um, it's just turning and it's changing, and we would be living in stagnation if there wasn't some sort of tension that we would call conflict and chaos. So. Um, Again, like when we get into periods, and I think we do, this is where dreams I think are so important. We go through life trying to organize the chaos into something that's manageable. And then we get set in our ways and we don't want to change. And we think that, well, this has worked for 20 years. Why do I have to change now? But then it seems like the universe throws us a curveball so that we have to take the challenge and come up with a creative way that involves our evolution, that involves, a way for us to keep growing. And I think dreams are a perfect example. Every single person, every single night dreams, whether they remember it, remember the dream or not, it's not important. But the rapid eye movement is
Yes.
showing that they're having a dream. Well, it's a very creative process. So even people who would say, "Oh no, I'm not creative. I'm more of a scientist, or I only know
Right.
linear things," their mind, and this is what Freud wrote a lot about, the genius, the way that the mind can take a very complex problem and come up with like three different things and make a hybrid. We say dreams are crazy because they don't make any sense, but it's
Right.
these hybrid symbols. When we peel away the layers,
Right.
we start, we get the sort of a type of guidance to work through what it is that's happening. So we're very creative. Our dreams prove that we're creative. The universe is creative. I mean, people don't realize that the Earth's been here for 4 billion years or more. We showed up like 2 seconds ago.
Right.
We're
That's true.
and just because we have, put together our understanding of what it's like to be alive on the planet doesn't mean it's the highest way or best way. Or, I think all of the creatures are on this earth, including us, are being guided towards what nature's trying to do, which is develop the best that can possibly be. I mean, all these billions of years, it's done all kinds of bringing things together. And out of that bringing together, something new emerges. Even when, I don't know, like that when oxygen started to be released on the planet, it killed a lot of the things that existed at the time because they were like single-celled anaerobes or,
Mhm.
you know, but still it like led to then all the multicellular creatures and some of those processes then, because you're a scientist, they went inside to become our mitochondria or our digestive tract or, so
Right.
so if nature's been improving itself continuously, even when it looks like it's making a mistake, we're in this little piece of time. Why would it be doing anything other than making us grow stronger, making us an example of the best of what it can create at this moment? So that's a mouthful, huh?
It is, but as you're saying this, I just remember an article that I just read last week about these mushrooms that have been growing that are I guess decomposing plastics and trash, like they're actually eating this plastics or trash that's on the planet, these mushrooms, and that's what they're basically they're cleaning the earth. And
Somebody
so
has to do it, right? That's
yeah, and I
nature.
found
That's
I
how.
found that so fascinating that these mushrooms have found a way to evolve to clean the earth. The earth is
Uh-huh.
cleaning itself.
Well,
And
because mushrooms are a form of, like bacteria that break down carbon into the next, release the atoms into whatever the next generation. So
right,
it makes sense that mushrooms would be processing, but I wonder what their benefit is by doing so.
that's
We
true.
made something and we're adding now uh molecules to them.
Right.
I
What
don't
is
know.
their benefit? And is there a benefit
Yeah.
for them? That's really fascinating. And
Well,
so
that's why, yeah.
go ahead.
Oh, I'm just saying that's why I have complete faith in nature, that it knows what it's doing.
Because
And
nature makes no mistakes.
exactly. And if we get too full of ourselves, it'll sweep us right away.
It really will, and it has.
It
And
has.
so, I mean, time in and time out. And so, let's go back to dreams being a guidance. And so, at the start of this episode right now, you'd mentioned that you've been good at analyzing dreams. How did you become aware that you were good at this, or that you were onto something at being able to interpret dream or unravel what a dream symbolism had to tell you or someone else?
Well, I just remember being very young and interpreting everybody's dreams. So I kind of could say, on one hand, I was sort of born with that ability, and I did have kind of a seizure sort of situation, that I've dealt with during my life. And in the old days, in the biblical days, people that had epilepsy, had other gifts or whatever. I really don't know
Yes.
why, but spent my life studying then the I think once the internet allowed me to then work with people all over the world, to test out the types of dreams and the way that our dreams progress. And this has been like about 25 years or whatever, just with the internet, it's just given me kind of like it's not so much that it's taught me, it's just kind of validated the understanding that I had. And I think, like I was mentioning, most people don't remember their dreams, which is fine. They're still changing us. They're like our dreaming process is like a digestive organ. We assimilate ideas that are nourishing and we let go of those that are self-defeating, whether or not we remember them. But what happens when we do remember them and we work with them is we get a lot more insight into ways that we can be healthier, stronger, happier, and so I do a lot of dream work with people. In fact, I'll work with a client who this happens all the time, where we'll start on some topic and then they'll start telling me their dreams, and it's like I'll present the symbolism back to them. Like one client recently had a dream about a boat called the not the abandonment, but something like that. The word was, and so I said, so we got into a whole discussion about abandonment. So it's like the dreams guide us then, and a lot of times to talk about things that most people don't even know is an issue for them. So it's like some side of us knows us better than we know ourselves, and I feel like it's a natural mechanism. It's part of evolution because again, like the ego is really a survival organ or manifestation. It's
Mhm.
kind of the face of how we are trying to control the environment so that it's safe. The mind's always looking for what's wrong, what's out of place in the environment so that we can get it back to the way we understand it. And if we didn't have the dreaming process, because parts of the mind are abated, like ego's not really existent in the dreamscape. I mean, it is technically, but very on a very small scale. Parts of logic abate, and so we have this sort of free for all of self discovery in this landscape. In fact, one of my books, the Mythology of Sleep, is about the hero's journey in the dreamscape. And I kind of use mythology and the archetypes from each culture around the world to talk about sort of dream themes, the warrior, the survivor. And so um, in this, it's almost half of the day. I mean, seriously, it's like almost half of our existence we spend in a different way of understanding ourselves and
So
in a
true.
freer way, right? So I see it as an evolutionary mechanism that if we didn't dream, we couldn't grow. We couldn't let go of the self-defeating ideas that hold us back. And I believe each of us, every single one of us on this planet, every entity on this planet, not even just us humans, has got a very unique compilation of their genes, even among siblings, you know. And so we have this specialness to us, and the more that we can, follow the inner cue of what we might rise to, which is where all the, that's where you need kind of the challenge too from the daily life. And that's where I see synchronicity, because we'll be doing something in our dreams. And when I'm working with people, they're more aware of what they're dreaming. Therefore, they're more aware of the synchronicity as it happens, where what the symbolisms inside are matching what's going on outside. And a lot of times that synchronicity is kind of like the hero's kind of, call. uh, I'll notice somebody will be working through a difficult idea, and then something will happen on the path where they have the opportunity to go the new way or buy into the old way. Does that make sense? And that's what I see the synchronicity doing.
The
So,
synchronicity of the dream, the message that they get, the experience that they're having, or the feeling, the felt sense that they're having in the dream
mhm,
versus what they're experiencing in waking life has a
mhm,
synchronistic, like
connection.
parallel connection.
Mhm. And because they're monitoring their dreams, they're aware of the synchronicity. So, for example, one client was struggling with her spiritual identity, and um, she was brought up not to be able to express that she was Jewish. And so she grew up as kind of a Christian. And so there's this shadow. Have you ever heard of the shadow? When
Yes.
the parts of ourselves that we repress or deny, it kind of stalks us, which is a whole nother discussion, because I have a lot of very successful women who dream of the male stalker trying to break into the house. And that's a part of themselves when they were young that maybe didn't get along with mom because they were a caregiver to mom, and they're fully capable and very professional. And yet they, have somebody trying to break into their house, and that's them. That's the powerful side of them that just wants to come in and sleep in its own bed. So, in the case with this client with the Jewish persona that wasn't being expressed, she basically then had a situation where she's called out, and everything that she'd been working through in the dream, right there in real life, she had to either own the Jewish identity, or continue to hide it away. So to me, that's the synchronicity.
I
And
see.
she wouldn't have known if she hadn't have been watching her dreams.
That's excellent. Carrie, I've often heard and I've read and obviously also studied in psychology and dream analysis that a lot of our dreams are us. Everything is us. Whether it's another
Absolutely.
individual, that's us. Whether it's a
Hmm.
dog barking at us, scaring us, that's us. Is that what
Hmm.
you found that to be true as well?
Absolutely. And that's why I think that's kind of, I call it the ABCs of dreaming, but why most people have difficulty understanding the message from their dreams is because they're not recognizing that even the landscape, if you're dreaming of like a frozen
Wow.
environment as opposed to a desert or a very
Uh-huh.
lush, with trees and green, it's representing you. It's telling, when somebody's sharing that dream, I can see kind of get a feel for their inner world. It's our inner garden too, like, and yeah, the other people that appear in our dream, I always say, think of the adjective that you would use to describe them. So, like, Brad Pitt is a big one for a lot of people, because he's, why? Because this is a whole nother discussion, like I said, the male and female persona, but he kind of embodies both, and I think Carl Jung, wrote a lot about the anima and animus, like the
Yes.
male dreaming of the crazy, crazy woman when he's not owning his feelings, and then she kind of evolves. But so, like, you could dream of Brad Pitt, but he's really representing sort of like a blend of the masculine, feminine, and I only say that because he's a sensitive male, right? So, and he's famous, so he
Sure.
pops up in a lot of people's dreams.
That's really
But
interesting. As a
yeah,
symbol.
yeah. And so, like, if you dreamt of a particular famous person, or just somebody from work, it's not that you're supposed to call them or something about them. What is it about them? What's the adjective you use to describe them? And then are you adopting that quality or discarding it? Why is that important? So the other people, all the animals, have a like dogs, I see as kind of unconditional love, as opposed to cats that are more solitary. But
Mhm.
people that are kind of going deeper into relationships might dream of dogs. When people are going through transformation, and there's like a cycle that I see people go through, they'll dream of, they'll make these breakthroughs, they'll have these great dreams, and then all of a sudden they dream of having this unknown child, it was this baby. It wasn't my baby. It was like somebody's baby, but now I have to take care of it. And that sort of represents their new emerging self. And so, yeah, everything is you.
And so if everything is you, and in order for you to really get a sense, so let's say, so you're talking about this, and I'm thinking of a million things here. So one of the things that I'm that I'm thinking is here, what about the dreams where we dream our past loved ones? When is it a visitation dream, and when is it a message about ourselves within ourselves?
Well, the past loved ones, that's there's one that I call the past flame. So when you dream, when you're in a very happy marriage, and all of a sudden your old boyfriend from high school is making an appearance in your dreams, people are all, "Why am I doing that?" You
Oh
know.
no, I'm sorry, I meant
No,
pulling
I
that.
know what you mean. I know,
Oh,
but
okay, okay,
I
okay,
want to
great.
just touch on this because it's
Okay,
two
great.
different things. So it may be that now in your life, like back then, you gave that person the power to validate your worthiness and ability to be loved. And now maybe you're on a path where you've changed careers and you're trying to, like, maybe you're going to go on an interview and you're trying to boost up your self-esteem again. And that old character will appear in the dream as representation of your self-love. So, and old grandparents can show up in dreams representing kind of our wise self, and then there's the times where we dream of the loved ones, where it feels more like a visitation.
Right.
And since, and again, that book that I mentioned earlier, I talk about the three parts of a dream. And so the first part will tell me what's the, what's the conflict. And then the second part will refer to a lot of times to past issues, things that created it. And then the third part will always be the most bizarre, and it always has the best clues of how, to break through. But in that third portion, I also see prophecy, like you'll get information that you couldn't possibly have known because it won't come for another 3 weeks, and so
Right, like premonitions.
exactly. So since I know that in that dream state, you get content that's not linear, it doesn't follow time, it's not part of our 3D, world that we are born and die in. So why wouldn't we have a connection to the timeless world where our loved ones may pass on to when they pass? And yeah, can have prophecy, they can have, connections with those who have passed. So I mean, I'd say as a general rule of thumb, everything is you, but you'll know when your, loved one comes to you've been grieving, and they come and you have a dream that, you know, I'm happy, please, I need you to let me go, or whatever it is their message is, because they want so much for you to be healthy and happy. And of course you're gonna have that connection. I don't know if that makes sense.
It makes sense. So what's making sense to me is when we're in this dream state, since it's out of time space reality, it's
Boundless,
it's
boundless.
boundless, right? And so I mean, basically anything is possible, but all is possible, and anything is possible within our dream world.
Hmm. And the fun thing, which maybe one day I'll write a book about it, but it's been the answer I can't answer. Who's guiding our dreams? Like, is it God? Is it nature? Is it our higher self? Is it our ancestors? Like, we know that there's a part of us that is wise and knows more about our life path than we do. Because how can I work with so many people and reveal their dream, and they'd be like, "How did you know that's what I'm been dealing with my whole life?" Or, so
Right.
does that make sense? Like,
It does. I'm
who's
wondering
guiding
if
it?
because I mean, I've had some fun with dreams where I'll write down a question and see if I get some kind of answer within a week or whatnot. Either the felt sense or whatever will give me some type of answer on
Hmm.
for a question. So I'm wondering if maybe you've asked this for yourself, who's guiding our dreams, and maybe you'll get an answer in your dreams.
Hmm. I guess I don't want the answer, because
Ooh,
it's like, well, because I love the discovery, right? That's the,
and that's what
you
it's
know,
about.
Yeah, that's what it's about. And just in the same way, I could never tell you what happens, when we die. You know what I mean? Like, I'll probably have to die before I could come back into your dream and tell you.
Right? Isn't that
That would be
incredible though?
that would be scary. But one thing I will say is that in the book of Job, which is in the Old Testament, which traces back then to the Hebrew, probably in somewhere in Samaria, because that's where Abraham was before they traveled to the Promised Land. They're in the book of Job, which I guess some people say actually has Arabic it's an Arabic story, but it's ancient, and I find that fun. At the very end, and I can't quote you what chapter or whatever, but it talks one of his friends, I think the very last friend that visits him to get him to repent or whatever,
Mhm.
it says that, you know, God speaks to us in dreams in a vision of the night. When deep sleep falls on mortals, then their ears are open. So I find it fascinating that that was a message that's very ancient, and that, of course, we when I was first writing about dreams, and there people didn't think dreams had any relevance. Today that's totally different. I think more people are recognizing that our dreams are very informative.
They are really informative. You know what's interesting is I often have dreams, and I've just had this experience just like 2 nights ago where I'm on another planet. And I know I'm on another planet. It doesn't look earthly, it doesn't feel earthly, but yet I'm not scared and I'm comfortable, and there's no beginning and no end, as we
Mm-hmm.
know in dreams.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been on planets, and so I mean, am I traveling? Do our spirit or our energy travel out of our body into other planets?
Well, I think that the planet becomes a symbol for the changes that you're going through. Like, for example, it's very common to have kind of a UFO type dream when we are losing the sense, when we're going through a change and we're losing the sense that the old way is going to stay, and things get really alien very fast. And so there's that part of us mirrored back to us in aliens trying to attack us, and
Yeah.
which I write a lot about. The people that are in their 20s have a lot of chase and attack dreams because so many new identities are coming out at once, that the old identity is fighting the new identity, and everything feels threatening. And so when you talk about being on a foreign planet, or even being in a foreign city, this tells me that there's something in a very holistic way, because when you say it's a planet, it feels like a circle, it feels like an orb, feels like free, like you've busted out of limitations. And but it's a foreign
Right.
object, foreign to the
It is.
earth, foreign to what you know is home.
Mhm.
So you have to ask yourself, what am I doing right now that would be allowing me to feel like my inner world is galactic, what's the word? Like ultra galactic or intergalactic, or that sort of thing. So I think it has really to do with your own growth and your boundlessness at this point.
It's really incredible. You know what I'm thinking and feeling as you're saying all this is because we spend, I mean, half or what's the percentage of our lives dreaming?
At a minimum of a third, let's say, a third of our life.
A third of our life dreaming. I'm feeling that there needs to be some more classes and schooling, even in elementary school, about our dreams.
Well,
Because
if
if
we
we're
would
able,
have, if
what's
we
that?
would have, if we would have come to not the United States, but North America, and adopted the ways of the natives, we would know that, more about what,
True.
because to them, that their dreams were that's how they knew everything. So we'll get there. We just sort of like buried it all with our dogmas, and now we have to kind of allow. And what's fascinating is, so I had launched the website in the early 2000s, maybe late 90s. No, the internet's only been around since the mid 90s, but um, and I wrote books about dreams, and I would talk to publishers, and they were like, "You're writing about what? Oh, you're from California." Like, they were
Oh,
so
geez.
dismissive. And then I made, when I found out that there was apps with Apple, came up with apps, and I have a really great developer, and he's like, "You know what? We should make an app so that we can drive people to your website." And the app like shot to the top 10. It was like you type
Wow.
your dream in, it interprets your dreams. And those younger early adopter, they were nuts for it, and now it's everywhere. Like, everybody's into dream interpretation online, or whatever. But it just showed me that it took the younger generation to kind of give it. I mean, still, if you talk to a scientist in their 50s or 80s or something, maybe they'll say, "Oh, it's just a bunch of electrical processing and nothing."
Right. Oh
But they're
yeah.
not like, they haven't spent their life like me. I've spent my life working and following and watching the kind of what Jung did, I guess, where you see like the common archetypes, you see the symbols repetitive. Doesn't matter what culture you're from. Like I work with people all over the world. Sure, in areas where they take more trains, maybe the train appears more than like a car being lost in a parking lot. Those dreams where I can't find my car, so but but it's still the same. Anything that has to do with transportation represents our motivation, how we're moving forward. Where a train is like the sense that somebody's laid down tracks we can't change. So we're jumping on and off the train. Maybe our parents want us to become a doctor and we want to be a poet and we lose our car when we're changing our work direction, because a car represents kind of how we're moving forward
Our
but it's
inner
pretty.
navigation. Yeah.
Yeah, like yeah, our motivation, I think, is a good word for it. But it's common around the world.
You know what? Also, Carrie, I've had some dreams where something happens exactly the way I dreamt it years ago. I'll be somewhere and be like, you know what? I dreamt this place like 6, 7 years ago. And I always think, I mean, that's really incredible when these things happen. And they happen,
Hmm.
I'll say they happen pretty often,
Hmm.
whatever often is, but enough for me to
Yeah.
recognize it.
Well, it's a form of synchronicity, yeah,
Yeah.
that something in a dream has made its appearance on your path, so it gives it a little extra attention. Like it has like when you feel the sense of synchronicity, it's almost like there's an importance there.
There's a
um,
message there.
there's a message there, but a lot of it's just kind of validation. It just gives you the sense of, okay, well, if I dream this and now I'm experiencing it, and I'm following my own drummer, my drummer must be drumming right. Like that. It can be those sorts of validations.
Right. Oh my
But
goodness.
there's a lot of I don't know. The more you work with your dreams, let's say, the more you step out of time. You
Yes.
definitely can then start to get a sense that there's really no difference between what's going on in here and what's going on out there, you know,
Right.
in terms of like we're meeting exactly what we need to meet, just like we dream exactly what we need to dream. And then all the characters that show up are there to help us grow in the same way that, we're moving through these changes in our dreams.
That's really incredible. I'm glad we're having the discussion. I'm going to pay even more attention to my dreams and see what I end up feeling or what I end up looking at symbolism and trying to interpret, because the dreams are trying to guide, as you said in the beginning, they're our guidance. So they're trying to help us figure things out and also point us into the direction where we're want to be, where we're going, or even just to be our inner North Star, correct?
Correct, because like I was mentioning, the I call it the left brain that we spend a lot of our daytime hours in, where we spend a lot more in the right brain when we're dreaming. It's all imagery driven, symbolic, and the left brain's very logical, and it's very survival driven. So we spend our life not wanting change. We're not friends with change. We don't like change. We want things to be the same. And so it's not so much that our dreams are pointing us in true north, which they are, but they have to break us out of our self-defeating, limiting ideas so that we can keep growing and evolve to the possibilities. Like every person on this planet may not achieve, let's say that we're all born with this in Taoism they call it Te. That's where you get the Tao Te Ching, the Te. The Te is like the blueprint of Tao within the individual, but that that Te is sort of the design. Let's say that there's an ultimate place that you can get to. You may not make it. You may only get halfway, but I feel like dreaming is helping to unleash its message to us,
Dreams are they're helping to unleash that message to us
like
so
our
that we
interior blueprint
our interior blueprint so that we can heal and also take the path that we want to take, that we
that
ultimately
we're
are
meant to take, that we're
meant
meant to
to take.
take. Yeah. I feel like there's, I think we're each born with a destiny that's within us. That's like the possibility that we will be one of nature's most unique and best examples of 2024. We have that we have that gift from life to become a great example of the best of what nature can be. How much we move towards it is the difference between whether we want to stay the same or kind of keep exploring, taking challenge in stride, knowing that challenge is peeling away the layers that are keeping us from understanding what we're capable of. It's just a constant growth, and there's no limit. There is no ceiling to how high we can go. I hate to use the word high as if it's,
Sure.
but how far we can go, let's say, towards our, greatness. All of us.
This is really amazing. I've met
Like you,
plenty.
you've done it, you've done it. You've walked the walk.
I'm doing it. I'm doing
I
it.
know you are.
I'm doing it to my best ability, really. And you know what I'm thinking too as you're saying this is I remember my dreams a good 5 nights a week. And as you're saying this, I'm feeling like how persistent my dreams are to constantly be trying to guide me and give me a message every time I close my eyes and go into that REM sleep. I mean, that is some persistence. It's not going to stop. It wants me to get to where I'm destined to be.
Exactly. Because you know why? You proved yourself. You proved yourself worthy.
Wow. This is amazing. Which is why,
Yeah. So
I mean, because I remember
go
reading
ahead.
that Einstein used to have dreams of his equations and wake up with answers,
Hmm.
because that was his destiny to find the answers to all
Hmm.
this science stuff that he was meant to do.
Which is why, which is why he said imagination is more important than knowledge. It's the power to get beyond what we already know that gives us the opportunity for genius.
Imagination is more important than knowledge because imagination is creativity in motion.
Exactly.
I love this. And without imagination, there wouldn't be any knowledge.
There wouldn't be new knowledge,
New knowledge.
which brings us back to chaos. Like why it takes chaos in order to bring about creativity, because there has to be, at every level in the universe, you need friction, or like we can say opposites come together and everything goes to a higher level, or
Right.
things change, and friction is what makes things move. And so we have to have, in fact, one of my books, Nothing Bad Happens in Life, is all about the idea that we have the wrong idea of conflict, but conflict is actually um it's a element of nature that is keeping us evolving, you know.
I love this, that nothing bad happens in life. That's the title of one of your books.
Hmm.
And what got you to write that? What inspired you,
um
motivated you to
I
write that?
Watching, working, I was really lucky that I grew up with a backyard that went down into a valley that was endless. Like,
Mhm.
and even now I live up in the Sierra Mountains, and my neighbors are trees and a river and rocks and
Oh, how
bears and
gorgeous.
even mountain lions, or everybody. I live in the wild, and I've always kind of had that. So I really feel like being a student of nature and as a philosophy is where I get really my inspiration for, in a way, I'm a little bit scientific, I guess, that I would, you know, study molecular biology or whatever to see what it can tell us about being human. And so I really liked Taoism, which it feels like there was Hinduism and there was Taoism. They were the older religions. And then Buddhism was kind of came from Hinduism. But as it went through China, it got blended with Taoism. So there's a lot of similarities
A lot of
in Buddhist
overlapping.
teaching. Yeah, a lot of overlapping. But when I go way back to the ancient Taoists, and I always say I have like a collection of the ancient Chinese philosophers, because I was near to San Francisco and go to all these old bookstores. And there I have such a great collection of those philosophers. And I feel like, Taoism too is what it, because they had such an appreciation for, like, I don't know if you're familiar with the I Ching, the I
Not too
Ching.
familiar. What could you tell us about it?
Okay. So, well, one fascinating thing is that Leibniz, the mathematician or scientist, he studied the I Ching, and the I Ching is basically there's 64 principles, and each one embodies nature in a state of change. And there is no beginning and there's no end because it's just this endless churn of change. And a hexagram of these 64 is built with 6 lines. And the lines are either an open line, which means that it's like a dash dash, or a closed line. And how their form tells whether we'll have 2 hexagrams to read from or one. We say it's changing. But Leibniz looked at that, turned it sideways, and said, how is it possible that with 2 things, an open and a closed line, we get like all of life, all the description of life in all of its evolutionary forms? Well, that became our binary code. And that's what's driving technology today. And
Yes.
this is back in the 1600s or something. And so I think it's really fascinating that they had in ancient times such an understanding of this, of nature as a teacher, And so anyway, just to answer your question, what made me write the book is,
Yes.
I was working with the I Ching initially, and I saw it as it's an oracle. Like that's what I have on my website. You can go. In fact, when you have a chance, go to my website and go to oracles and then look at the I Ching, and you hit the button 6 times and it gives you a reading. And I feel like of all the oracles, dreams are an oracle in my opinion. It feels like you're working with a master, with a Zen master, like the wisdom and stuff. But the book itself was also designed for leaders to teach leaders and kings, and so it's sort of a book of philosophy. So nothing bad happens in life is inspired by my work with the I Ching, but it also is like helping us to understand the nature of conflict in nature, the way that so it's kind of like a great leadership development book, and a great book to develop faith in the way and following, learning to trust that this here right now is perfect. That everything back then led me to here. So that must have been perfect too. So what does that tell me
Right.
about tomorrow? Well, it's going to be perfect, but I
Right.
have to show up.
Oh my goodness, I love this. With all disorderly comes orderly, because
Mhm.
without disorder, we can't have order. Therefore, we need disorder in order to create some type of order.
Right. And the minute we have order, guess what happens? Disorder
Disorder
sets
again.
in. Yeah. And that's really how the I Ching is put together, because the last 2 hexagrams before completion and after completion, you would think that they would fall in that sequence, and they don't. After completion comes before completion. And it's said that they were put in that sequence because nothing comes to an end.
I
And
love
that's really
this.
what, yeah, and that's what I love really about Taoism the most, is that the best thing that it can teach somebody in terms of philosophical outlet is to avoid extremes. So, no, beyond just the idea that you shouldn't have judgment that comes from Buddhism or yoga practice, or, kind of controlling the tendency to have desires or perceived outcomes so that we are disappointed. To live without extremes is where we are able, it's not good or bad. It's just so, it's perfect. In fact, I think that when we would hear people making kind of a caricature of the ancient Chinese, like kind of the kung fu, that's probably before your time. But David Carradine was like this Shaolin monk in the America West, and he was constantly reminiscing about his training with a monk, and But that when they say also, have you heard that?
I
I,
have
I
heard
think,
that.
and that's kind of why my website is cafeausoul, but it's
Oh,
soul.
wow.
It's soul Oul, but I still like but I think it's just so. It's just
Just so.
so. Like, yeah, and there's a story about a farmer, and his son rides his horse, and the horse throws the son and the son breaks his leg and the neighbor comes over. Oh my God,
Right.
that's horrible. That's horrible. And he says, no, it's just so or whatever. And then the next day the army comes and they can't take the son because he's in a cast. And the neighbor comes over. Oh, that's so good. That's so good. No, it's just so
It's
like
just
the whole
so.
story unfolds of like, you know, uh, the horse ran away. Oh, that's so bad. But then the horse comes back with another horse. Oh, that's so good. So I feel like learning to not classify good and bad, being in the moment, letting things unfold. It is a way of living in joy continuously.
And so, oh, I agree, absolutely. I mean, that's the epitome of being in the moment because you're not
Hmm.
judging at that moment, and without any judgment, you're just being present and you're being all there is because
Right.
that's all there is to be at that moment, especially if you're not judging extremes. And so, when you're talking about extremes, that's what you mean, correct? You mean good and bad.
Hmm. Right. Because like, like you can look at a hill in the daytime and it looks green and flowery, and then at night it can look frightening and you don't want to go,
Yeah.
but it's the same hill, just the lighting has changed, but the hill hasn't, so beyond good and bad, what is it? It's this, it's perfect.
And so in being beyond good or bad and something being perfect as is, if someone could practice that way of philosophy, that way of feeling, that way of being more often, we would experience more joy. But is joy then good or bad, or is joy then just joy?
Joy is, how if you eat like cake and your tummy feels good, joy is the outcome of being present.
Oh,
And
wow, I
uh
love this. Joy is the outcome of being present.
right, like, so it's not like you're in pursuit of the cake.
Right.
But if cake makes your tummy feel good, I don't know. It could be different things for different people. Um, which is why I talk about like compassion as a path. Like it's not like, oh, it's not the idea that, oh, if you're compassionate and kind and generous, you're going to go to heaven. It isn't that. It's that if you're in the moment and you don't separate yourself from anything around you, everybody is your brother or sister, or, you take responsibility for your own condition. And even if you think you know your condition and conflicts on your path, well, maybe there's something there that you don't realize you're still holding on to. Or, that's compassion. Compassion is to treat everybody as if they're a part of you. And if you're compassionate, it keeps you in the moment and it leads to enlightenment. So it's a gift of the work that you do in remembering to be compassionate and non-judgmental, not going to extremes. The gift is the joy of being able to witness the great mystery, the mystery of just how beautiful and meaningful the life is, in my opinion.
It really is. It's incredible. Hey, Carrie, if compassion is is treating like everyone is a part of you, what is self-compassion?
The same, treat yourself with as much compassion as you would treat your neighbor. Like compassion is the opposite of ego, right? Compassion is not knowing, not assuming. It's an
Not judging
openness.
yourself, and that's
Right,
basically also being compassionate towards yourself.
exactly.
Not being in that a mentality of extremes with yourself.
Hmm. And when you do get, like I said, if you practice compassion, it leads to enlightenment. Enlightenment leads to joy, and joy leads you to do more of that. Now, you're in this compassionate, joyful state, and all of a sudden you get stuck in some self limiting idea. You get full
Sure.
of yourself and preachy or whatever it is, and the
Right.
universe comes along and there you go, it knocks you down. And then you're like, well, what did I do? I was being a good person. I was being compassionate. Why is this, happening to me? Well, I need to grow some more. So maybe there's a new idea.
Right.
Maybe beyond compassion is something else.
Right. Oh my goodness, this is really incredible. And so I'm curious, what keeps you going? What keeps you motivated?
Love, love
Oh,
for
same
everything.
here. I
I'm
love
really, I'm
love.
really bad. I had my friend came to visit the other day, and and I have like a basil plant in the window. And I looked at her and I go, are you able to pull the leaves off and eat them? And she's like, yeah, of course. I'm like, well, I can't. So I had to like buy basil that was already in a bag because
Oh,
I can't
you
pull the
can't
leaves
actually
off.
pluck it off the plant,
No,
right? I
no.
I totally get it. I understand.
Like I have this like compassion or love for everything, animals, people, plants. To me, plants, just because they're moving in time differently, they're looking to survive. They're trying to find the sun. They have something.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's kind of like she thinks I'm a nut. Most of my friends think I'm a nut, but
Well, I had a similar
uh,
experience actually just a few weeks ago. I was out out in the sun too much and I had sunburn on my body, and I have got this beautiful aloe vera plant, and my roommate was just like, "Well, just cut off a leaf and put it." I was like, "Wait, I can't do it." I couldn't do it. And
exactly.
then but I did, and I felt numb. My throat. I was so sorry. I love you. You're so beautiful. Thank you
I
for oh
know.
my goodness, you're sacrificing a piece of yourself to make me better. And I just,
Mhm.
it was really difficult to do it.
What's fascinating though is they'll grow it back, their appendage or whatever. So maybe it's not bad, but yeah, I mean, just because I love to eat basil and tomato, and I kind of do it a lot, so just pulling leaves off that plant, it was just not going to work.
Yeah,
It
it's
was like-
challenging. I feel you on that. Oh my goodness. And so, let's see here. How do you actually have clients to come see you?
No, it's all remote.
It's all remote.
Uh,
And so, okay,
Yeah,
so you do everything from your website. People go into www.cafeausoul, cafeausoul.com,
right.
and they're able to book services with you.
There's like a section on services. I do, dream work or coaching. My most popular thing is I do $60 an hour sessions that can be based on an oracle reading or a dream or just talking or, you know, but yeah, they can find me through the website. And then we basically do like an online session like this. Uh,
And you also do astrology, correct?
yeah, yeah. I've been doing that since the 70s.
Wow.
I
You mean like
swear.
birth charts and everything?
My aunt was the astrologer for the Reagans. For yeah,
Wow.
and she had like the astrologer. You're in LA, is
I'm
that
in
where you're
LA,
at?
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Pasadena, which is close to
Okay,
LA.
her name was Joy Rippeth. She
Wow.
passed, but Joy Rippeth, and she was in Marina Del Rey and had the Astrology Institute. So she was, and this is in the 70s, so it was kind of, so she was their astrologer. But I was probably 12 when she, started teaching me, gave me Rob Hand's books, who's one of the greats, Robert Hand, and all the stuff. And at one point in LA, even I did corporate astrology, but it's a fascinating way of when I was talking before about the day, the blueprint, the design, I see it in the chart. Like to me, that when you see the wheel and all the glyphs, it starts to tell a story. So I definitely, can get a sense of why they chose the parents they did, what the
Right,
path is, where true north is for them. Um, so it, so it's not something you need to live by every day, but to get like a life path reading, I
right.
think it's pretty. In fact, I just did a reading for a guy in Belgium the other day, and Rob Hand had read for him, and he's like, "Oh yeah, he said that too." And I'm like, "Well, it's the same chart. We're obviously going to see the same stuff, you
Right.
know." So it's
This
kind of
is really incredible. It's
yeah,
beautiful. It really is. And so
yeah.
last night we had a super moon. We had a full moon super moon. What could you tell us about that? Or blue
Well, I
moon. It was a
mean,
blue moon,
yeah,
right? A
yeah,
blue
Blue
super
Moon. I
moon.
mean, to me, astrology is more of a mythology.
Uh-huh.
It's more of a like it's not scientific. It's not really based on what we see out there, even though that describes how things are moving or whatever. It's kind of more of like archetypes, you know. How can I explain it? It's basically we we're a microcosm of the macrocosm at the moment of birth. And then boom, you draw this mandala and it, describes the life path or whatever. And it works. It's been working for 3,500 years. Obviously it works or we wouldn't still be using it. But it doesn't mean that that big rock out there in the universe, Jupiter, let's say, that it's gases and whatever. It's not literal like that. So I don't really follow a lot because I know like with the moon phases or the moon, um, like all the names for the moon really
Right.
come from kind of harvesting and hunters, and they usually take the name of whatever the season is, or
Yes.
like you can have couple moons in a month. Well, that's we've told nature what the month is, but it's not, you know what I mean?
That's true.
So I don't really like pay a lot of attention. Like people get all caught up in Mercury retrograde. I don't. I I use it as a language. I feel like, in fact, I think my last book was Decoding the Night Sky, which is about Babylonian astrology.
Wow.
And I don't know if you've ever heard of Göbekli Tepe.
No.
It's kind of in Turkey. They found these drawings, the vulture stone, they call it, and they have all these glyphs and stuff. That's all astrology. And that goes back to 10,000 BC. And in Ratnagiri in India, same time period, they're finding these petroglyphs on the ground, that have the Pisces fish with the line, or so it's all.
Right.
I feel like
Yes.
I feel like we dreamed it. We dreamed it before we had language. It's very, very ancient, and um, the Sumerians, when they were preceding the Babylonians in their understanding of astrology. And of course, it was much, much later that the Greeks took it, turned a lot of it into mythology, and gave us more of our Western version. But if you look at the way Sumerian language, the the way it's drawn, it looks like stars, and
Wow, that's
and
incredible.
they were basically reading the sky like a language, in the same way that when I read the chart and you see the glyph and the line and who's the archetype that's ruling the house, and you start to hear these words, and oh, there's your mother, didn't wasn't real nurturing. She must have been kind of more
Yeah.
of a, you know what I mean? You could just start seeing this whole story
Start
come out
seeing the
of it.
blueprint.
Yeah, exactly. But then you have to think, well, it's not a bad thing that your mother didn't coddle you. You wanted that. And why? What does that have to do with your life path, And
Well,
which is
because there
another,
is no conflict. That's why there's nothing wrong with that.
exactly, which brings me to Pluto, which is my favorite. This is the humor of the universe. Pluto is the underworld deity, right? Like he's does it he's abducted Persephone as Hades, or that's why we have our seasons, or whatever it is. Pluto rules Scorpio, the eighth house, everything that has to do with like psychology, digging deep into the subconscious, like, the underbelly of life, or whatever. And it's a small asteroid, let's say they're calling it now, or he got demoted, he got
Yeah.
sent
Oh
underground.
gosh.
And when I look in a chart, the most important planet is Pluto. It's the first thing I look at. I'll look at the sun, the moon, and the ascendant, but Pluto tells me it's only going to go through so many houses, their whole entire life, four houses, and it tells me kind of the trajectory of their path. So, but I think it's funny when he got demoted, because of it's all about empowerment and power, and
Yeah.
here and it's like, it reminds me of politics.
I
People
guess it
that are
is in a
full
way.
of themselves. People are full of themselves. But anyway, yeah, I'm sure a lot of astrologers laughed because that just, I guess the reason I'm bringing it up is it doesn't matter what's going on out there. Like the science will never get astrology, and astrologers will never feel like they have to sell their technique to a scientist. They're two
Right.
different worlds. The world of archetypes is, we got them in the West, we got them in the East. There's a same kind of story, and they inspire our life path.
Archetypes are meant to inspire our life path.
Yeah, whether it's in dreams, whether we see them in astrology, whether we do a tarot reading, whether we do an I Ching reading, because like one of the I Ching principles is shocking, 51, shocking, like that's the element of surprise, and when like it's like the tower and tarot, the Shiva, the destroyer, in
Right.
Hinduism. And so it's kind of this art, who is this archetype, this destroyer, that breaks things down so that we can let go. Why? Because then we can go where we need to go. We're not holding on to the side of the tree on the side of the riverbank. We're now in the flow.
That's an archetype for our own internal struggle or whatever we're going through.
Exactly.
And
Right.
that's why all these archetypes are meant to, they're symbols to help us evolve.
Exactly. And Carl Jung, like Freud wrote a lot about, condensation, that idea of, that you get of complex thing like an onion, that the
Yeah, peel
mind
back
is,
the layers.
yeah, and the genius of the mind to create these hybrids and stuff. And he really pioneered our understanding of the unconscious, that we do have a side to us that has something to say, has some relevant, and then he kind of took it all down a sexual path where Jung brought out more of the spiritual side to it. And yeah, so Jung, saw, he kind of really pioneered the idea of archetypes, the collective unconscious, which is to say that there's a source of inspiration available to all of us, that in my opinion is why we dreamed a lot of our wisdom before we had language. Why you see the same symbols, the story of the flood, the things that are
Yeah,
repetitive in cultures with no previous contact.
that's right. And all over, I mean, all throughout history, no matter how many thousands of miles we are from each other, all these
Hmm.
archetypes have always existed as symbolism to guide us and give us messages towards our wellness and our greatest, highest and greatest good.
Hmm. And
This
one
is
of
great.
one of the interesting ones is the Nordic, archetypes where you have Odin, who has to give up an eye in order to get his omniscience. Like he's a deity for Pete's sake. Why isn't he
Right.
already all knowing or whatever?
True.
And then there's, Tyr, the god of war that fought with Fenris, and lost his arm. So now you got a one-handed god of war. So there's a really in the archetypes that come from each culture, there's a lot to be said about the psyche of the culture from their mythologies. And
Absolutely.
I think I mentioned I wrote that book, The Mythology of Sleep, which sets the hero's journey, mythical themes, or let's say dream themes, in different backgrounds. Like the warrior comes out of the Norse culture, the survivor comes out of the Egyptian stories of Osiris and Isis, and the way that they're disembodied and family, dysfunction, and all the things that drive the survivor through their healing journey. And so it kind of goes all around the world. Um, but to me, that ancient wisdom should never be abandoned. You know.
And it's interesting too, as you're seeing all this, it's all that ancient wisdom that's also showing us that it's still occurring now on this day, just in
Hmm.
a different
Hmm.
reality or different time,
Hmm.
that we're experiencing at the modern times, if you want to call it modern times, but it's still happening. It's still happening in an ancient
Hmm.
way.
Right. And to spend a couple days on a trail hiking, reading Siddhartha, or some story about an ancient an ancient hero tale, is so much more enlightening and wholesome than flipping through YouTube and hearing the right and the left yelling at each other, and
Oh, I
the
agree.
politics and the fear programming that's become a business.
Oh, yeah.
So it's kind of like that world of inspiring, you know, inspiring ideas. So and that's kind of what happens when we sleep. So even if we don't spend the day out on the trail reading the book, when we go to sleep, maybe, I've had like a client, for example, will say they dreamt of Thoth, the ibis-headed, you know, god from Egypt, and they have no knowledge of that mythology. And yet the dream had a lot to do with like darkness and burial and resurrection. And so it's interesting.
So much to talk about. I feel like we can continue and keep going because there's just so much within all these topics, so many incredible different layers that are all relevant to this day and age, no matter how
Hmm.
old it is. It's really incredible. So I have a poem that I wrote.
Okay.
We were talking about poetry. You mentioned it a few times actually during our interview, and I started writing poetry when I was 5 years old. It's been really incredible. I feel that it channels right through me. So basically what I do is I feel into your energy in a meditative process before interviewing you, and I write a poem from the sense felt sense that I get from your energy. So I'm gonna go ahead and read that now.
Okay.
All right, great. When I finally let go, I felt my body rise to the skies as if becoming a bird. My wings spread and I took a glide across Mother Nature. I set myself free as I took a dive into the infinite arms of air. I set myself free as I brushed over mountain tops and kissed the breeze as it caressed my body. True joy comes when you release and allow life to guide your joy. Unlike separation, this is togetherness. And this is how we are in harmony. And
And
that's it.
you wrote that before we even started talking. So
I
look at
know,
how,
right? Isn't that incredible?
yeah,
It's
that's
so
beautiful.
amazing to really
And
see how
such
it
a
all
great,
comes together at the very end.
uh,
And it's really, I mean, thank you for your inspiration, your motivation, and
yeah.
just so much information. I'd love to have you back on the show with another one of these incredible topics. I'm sure we can go talk about tarot or even more about archetypes or even oracles. But where can our viewers, our watchers, and our listeners find you?
Well, my books are all on Amazon, Kari Hohne, and my website pretty much has got everything. It's really like I build it as like a home of all of our archetypes. So whether you're looking for Eastern, Western, dream interpretation, you type your dream in, it'll tell you what your dream means. It's kind of there for people to just help themselves.
This is really incredible. Kari Hohne, everybody, on A Little Less Fear podcast. Check out our website at www.cafeausoul.com. Thank you so much for sharing your incredible wisdom here on A Little Less Fear podcast. Wishing you
So
love
nice
and
to meet
light.
you.
So incredible to meet you. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in to A Little Less Fear podcast. If you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button. Tell your friends and your family about A Little Less Fear podcast. And if you are interested in being on my show, feel free to leave me an email at alittlelessfear@gmail.com. Or if you have any questions or comments and you also want to leave me an additional message, you can also do so from my website, leaving an inquiry at www.alittlelessfear.com. You can get a copy of my book on Amazon, Amazon Kindle, and Amazon Kindle Unlimited, also titled A Little Less Fear. And thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate all the support. Leave me a review if you get a chance. I love to receive feedback, questions, and comments. And any way that I can be of support to you, please let me know. Thank you so much. I love you. Wishing you love, light, happiness, and many blessings your way.